This video exists to justify the sense of deja vu I got when I looked around and asked, why does no one talk in general about the heroic legend of Arslan? Even though the show came out in 2015, I only just finished watching the new version earlier this year, for reasons I can't really explain. As far as anyone needs to be concerned, it's a fantastic show, and I can't give a glowing enough recommendation to people looking for a less recent show to check out, especially if you're curious about more grounded, epic historical fantasy. This show has an outstanding pedigree. It's written by Yoshiki Tanaka, and if you don't know him, you're probably from a later generation of anime fans, or you're just a casual pleb. I have to say this because in my early days of scouring the internet for anime content, there was one series so lauded amongst the community that it was said it could transcend you from casual fan to a new plane of anime geekdom. I speak of Tanaka's best-known work, probably, The Legend of the Galactic Heroes, which I myself still haven't watched in any form, so I guess we'll have to go ahead and have a pleb party together. This isn't the first, second, or even the third time the story has been adapted either. From the novels, it's been made into a manga, an OVA, another manga, and now an anime based off of that new manga. Speaking of which, if the characters from this new version look a little familiar to some of you, that may be because you recognize the distinct stylings of a certain Hiromu Arakawa, who is in charge of the new manga adaptation from whence it comes. You'd think that with these strong associations between two most notably acclaimed anime that have come before it, I'd be seeing more people's recommendations list feature this show, or at least see it brought up in conversation more than Baccano or Princess Tutu. But it's not for some reason. As I go around looking for the opening and ending themes to add to my anime playlist, I come across others asking a similar question. Lo and behold, a simple suggestion. That the mean masses of the anime community are too interested in shonen isekai power fantasies with cookie-cutter main character archetypes to be able to sit back and appreciate superior storytelling at a slower burn. Well now, that's quite the conclusion to come to. I'm not completely out of favor with that opinion, because let's be honest, that's probably a contributing factor. Anime is more known for some things than others. While I'm sure there are plenty of other underlying reasons this show went under the radar back when, this logic in particular struck me hard, because it felt familiar. Why does this statement that seems to point to Arslan himself as being the reason a lot of anime fans couldn't get on board with the series feel like I've been here before? But yeah, because I have. And now I'm here to talk about where. Spoiler alert, you probably haven't even seen that one either. The 2000s have been an era of rebooting, remaking, and remastering older cartoons, from as far back as the early 20th century classics like Looney Tunes and Tom and Jerry. In this era, properties from the 1980s saw some great success in newer renditions of My Little Pony, The Transformers, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. To be fair, My Little Pony and Transformers had generations of experience to draw from when putting together their latest and greatest at this time. When 2011 rolled around, it was time to give a new coat of paint to another iconic franchise that had yet to see any new form of animation since 1988. The at the time one and only Thundercats. Now, talking about what I feel makes a successful or respectful reboot or reimagining of an older property is something that could make up its own video. For the purposes of this essay, here's what you need to know about the Thundercats from 2011. It only lasted one season. The official reason for that was that there were a lack of toy sales, but that's just a cover-up for the blatant network sabotage of the show. It came, it went, and now Thundercats fans have a new show to universally hate. In these troubling times of Lion-O and Company making a comeback in what is almost universally regarded as spitting in the face of the original franchise, it's not uncommon to see numerous comments referring back to how good the 2011 Thundercats were, at least compared to this atrocity. I've seen many a comment saying, "Remember that version that everybody loved?" And I kind of sit back and have to roll my eyes. Regardless of how the show went under, I need to point out two things. No, most people don't remember because it wasn't well advertised, and no, it wasn't loved by everyone. Every new version of an old franchise is going to hit speed bumps with the older fans, even if the people behind the new project are not actively trying to tick them off. In other words, despite all the heart and goodwill behind the show, there were bound to be detractors, and the most common complaint that showed up among the negative feedback to this shiny new Thundercats was, Lion-O isn't supposed to be skinny, 0 out of 10. Yep, we've come full circle, whether or not you've seen it yet. The reasons for both of these shows going relatively unnoticed by the communities that were supposed to appreciate them are almost as different as night and day. That's not what we're here to talk about. No, at least I'm here to talk about why it was that when I heard people don't like Arslan because he's not a power fantasy shonen protagonist, I had flashbacks to the skinny Lion-O complaint from a few years earlier. I found it very interesting that such similar complaints occurred between two characters from two very different worlds and unalike stories with different target audiences. But when I boiled it down to the straight facts, Lion-O and Arslan turned out to be the same character. Not beat for beat, but in the essence of an old and unappreciated protagonist archetype, the coming-of-age story. The coming-of-age story is defined as being marked by a main character growing from youth to adulthood, the attainment of prominence, respectability, recognition, or maturity. In other words, starting from something less than impressive and progressively growing into a role that is sometimes already filled by other, more widely regarded protagonists, such as the traditional hero, the anti-hero, and the underdog. Yes, there are many, many more that I could add to this list, and pretty much all of these archetypes can intersect and overlap, so I'll just be speaking in reference to primary character archetypes. In this vein, let us speak of Lion-O first. Contrary to what detractors might think, even in 1985, Lion-O's was a story of coming of age, and the dominant complaint regarding his 2011 counterpart is purely based on his appearance and not necessarily portrayal of character. OG Lion-O was a literal case of a child in a man's body after a stasis pod malfunction. Small Lion-O's brain doesn't age while his physical stature does, and it is made a point repeatedly, at least in the pilot, that he has a lot to learn before he can truly take up the mantle of the Lord of the Thundercats. This aspect of the character was retained in the first reboot of the show, but among the numerous changes to Third Earth, its inhabitants, their dynamics, and origins, Lion-O was given a radically different look and story, in part to appeal to a newer audience. Instead of being an adult with the mind of a child, new 2011 Lion-O's age and character took the form of a teenager somewhere right between the two. His story is different in terms of what happens, but when everything is said and done, Lion-O is still thrust headlong into a role he's not completely ready to undertake, even though he's been groomed for it since birth, arguably more so than the original Lion-O given the starting age here. In both series, Lion-O is given some big shoes to fill, and part of the character is watching him mature and grow into his status as Lord of the Thundercats. The funniest part of it being that he's the only one who actually can do this in both series because of magic nepotism, but I digress. In both shows, Lion-O has a series of lessons to learn and several trials are laid out before him that are intended to help him grow and prove his worth of wielding the Sword of Omens. He makes mistakes and needs help from time to time, and that's where all the other members of the team come in a it takes a village to raise a child kind of way. It's all intended to lead to the ultimate end of Lion-O becoming the man he's set up to be. In the case of the original show, we see what that looks like right from the beginning, and the challenges are all just a matter of Lion-O growing into his stature and status. Insert reasons based in the 80s as to why that is here. The intention for his 2011 incarnation was to follow Lion-O along his coming-of-age journey to eventually get to that point, with the unfortunate result being a single season and a payoff we'll never get to see due, I must state again, to network sabotage and intentionally poor publicity for the show. The two aren't the same character, and people are allowed to like or dislike one version over the other, but it seems a disservice to both characters to overlook the importance of their shared roots in earning the positions that they are given. Then, a few years later, we got Arslan's latest incarnation. Honestly, his story is really very similar to the new Lion-O's in the sense that he's a displaced prince with big shoes to fill, being guided by a diverse cast of more experienced characters, and young tagalongs. His goal is to use diplomacy to amass allies in neighboring countries to take back the kingdom he was brutally thrown out of and defeat the evil that has taken root there, or is taking further root there depending on how you want to view Arslan's radical policy changes. Every preview for the next episode is postfaced with the saying, "And thus would the boy become a king," setting up very clearly the path that is Prince Arslan's coming-of-age arc. Its beginning is marked by this statement and presumably will come to a conclusion if and when that statement comes to pass or shortly thereafter. Arslan is not a king yet. The entire story, as is implied by the name Heroic Legend, is an epic-style tale about how this actually scrawny 15-year-old will brave the world around him and rally his people to get to that end, being king, or some other end which likely results in this tale being lauded from the perspective of the history books in series lore. Like Lion-O, he has much to learn, and from early episodes on, his views on the world and the people that live there are challenged. Even though he has allies of a varied sort to guide him and mold him into the king they know, hope, and wish for him to become, it is ultimately Arslan who makes the decisions, and their jobs as overseers and protectors of their potential ruler is simply that, their own skills and character traits notwithstanding importance. I spoke about Lion-O in theory because his story got cut tragically short and will never be completed. In the case of Arslan, I can speak only of what I know, which has been made available to me. Over the course of the 16 volumes, the story has been completed, but Tanaka's novels have never been officially translated. Arakawa's manga adaptation is making its way over as it comes, but the anime stopped after 33 episodes, and until further notice, this is as far as I can speak to on the actual story. So in that respect, we have another similarity between these two protagonists, at least just from my experience. Coming-of-age stories are about a character being dynamic and watching them change and grow over the course of that story. Not just seeing them grow stronger, but seeing how they come from their origin to becoming a legend. But it's oftentimes found buried in modern stories or overlooked in favor of other protagonist archetypes. In the same vein that heroes being heroic just because it is the right thing to do, and villains being villainous for the sake of being evil, I suppose a story like this is far from appealing to the masses due to being overwritten, old-fashioned, or just plain boring. Even more modern stories that use the coming-of-age elements tend to make them more of a secondary characteristic behind the other archetypes, such as the popularized underdog and antihero types. Though some more recent series manage to make the most of this classic protagonist format, there's always still the glaring mishandling of the coming-of-age arc, which has been discussed in some vague terms on this channel before. In any case, I have traced this weird sense of having been here before back to its root and found a surprising likeness between these two leading characters from series I consider both to be underappreciated. Is there a further pattern worth looking into here, or perhaps it's just an unfortunate coincidence? Who can say? I have vampires to write about, so it boons me not to dwell on the subject much longer. However, it is definitely a good place to open up a dialogue and would like to know what other people think about the situation. I definitely feel like it's worth bringing the subject to light and would love any and all input from the audience on the matter. Well, I'll be signing off for now. Thank you to everyone who watched this video from start to finish, and I hope to hear your thoughts in the comments section. If you like this video, make sure to share the love by clicking on that thumbs up and consider checking out some of my other content or sharing it with your friends. Remember to subscribe and click on the notifications if you want all the updates on the happenings of this channel or my other social media, like my Twitch where weekly gaming streams happen and all sorts of shenanigans are had. And with that, once again I'd like to say thanks to y'all for watching this video and I hope to catch you in the next one. Ciao!